everyone. So I'm going to talk to you about digital communications. Giovanni's title for this is Campaigning in the Age of Social Media. And I'm going to give you a sort of a crash course on some of the things that we do in the UK, at Humanist UK, to grow our organization, to connect with more people, to really propel forward our individual campaigns and our overall work that we do. The context of this really is a sort of a membership model organization, or an organization that generates its money from small donations, and as some organizations in this room might get a lot of state funding, this is all applicable to you too. And equally, if you're from a smaller humanist organization in a part of the world where you're just starting out, or you've got hurdles to overcome, as long as you have an internet connection, some spare time, and maybe a bank account, some of the things that I'm going to go over will be useful to you too, hopefully. And I'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. I've got 42 slides, so I might not linger at any of them for too long, and Bob has helpfully covered about 6 of them. So I'll begin. So a bit about me. I've worked in publishing and communications for about 8 years now. So broad experience in that field. I'm currently acting as the Director of Communications and Development for Humanist UK. I led the rebrand from the British Humanist Association to Humanist UK. So that's given me lots of experience of digital communications and fundraising in general. To put that in context, our organization has 75,000 members and supporters. We've got a very large social media presence. It's 224,000 Facebook likes, just under 90,000 Twitter followers, about 1 million people on a good week seeing our posts. We get good media coverage, like some of my colleagues who manage our press work. And that, combined with the stuff we're going to talk about, makes us effective at changing the law in various ways. But it's also the reason we exist, because we generate most of our income from small donations. We don't have government money. We don't have major donors in the way that you might imagine. A lot of it is from people giving £4 a month or less. So, what are we going to cover? I'm going to talk about what people want to see from humanist organizations online, how you can grow your organization and get your message out, what it takes to make social media work well, particularly for a humanist organization. I'll be interested in the Q&A if there are different experiences on this, but I'm going to talk from my experience. And probably won't have time for this, but I might talk a bit about how you can use celebrities and how you can use other assets that you might have in your native environment to help things go forward. Might leave that for the Q&A, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, so Bob's done a lot of this, so this is good. Digital campaigning, what the hell does that mean? So keep it simple. Really, it's any campaign we do in an online context is what I mean by digital campaigning. So in this session, I'm going to talk about promoting your organization, growing your organization, social change, but equally, digital campaigns would include marketing of your ceremonies or something like that. So, and we're going to primarily think about 4 tools that you need to make things work well for you: Twitter, Facebook, a client that you can send emails from, and a website that does work to promote your brand and also bring in money. So we'll talk about that as we go along. And just be really clear about what I mean. An organization has lots of channels that it communicates its members with. Bob gave some examples. We're really talking about this middle pillar of channels here: social media, email, website. Okay. From doing this well, there's a lot to gain. You get your message out. You show people you exist. In some parts of the world, that's an incredibly powerful thing just to do. You can find your own supporters. Just realized I'm not looking at my notes, which I probably should be. I don't have any. You can grow your movement, acquire contact data, generate money for your work, influence public debate, as we were talking about, and as you were saying about norms and language, you can really change the narrative. I made the Humanist International team blush when I talked about the End Blasphemy Laws campaign, but that's exactly what they did. They took a campaign that had no identity, salience, or comprehension, and they made it a campaign that prime ministers want to talk about on the TV. So, and you can change people's perceptions of humanism, of issues. So, making all of that work well on social media. I'm going to run through this quickly. I appreciate I might be talking a little quickly. So there's one important rule that you have to bear in mind. And I'll take us back in time for a minute. So, in the ancient world, across ancient Egypt, when they would bury the pharaoh, when they would bury an important person, they would put them into a lovely tomb, they'd do all sorts of strange things with the body, and there'd be a phrase that they'd inscribe across all the temples on the walls behind them. This is a phrase that you see again and again. You see it in the writings of Socrates. It's found, so non-religious writers, it's found its way into Confucius' writing. You know, Jesus of Nazareth has used it as well. It's not a homily really, because it's really a simple maxim of how to live a good life. So it's got a humanist relevance, and it comes up again and again because it's easy to come up with. But it's absolutely crucial to good digital comms, and that is, can anyone read? Know thyself is the phrase that you'd find in Know Yourself and What You're About. And that's really about knowing your audience, but also what you stand for. Once you get that right, you'll find a lot of the stuff that you're about to do next as an organization fits into focus, comes into focus, starts to make a bit more sense. So when Humanists UK rebranded from the BHA, that was a big process of searching for our own identity, working out who we wanted to be. The British Humanist Association was a name that we came up with in 1965, and it does sound a bit like that. Similar, International Humanist and Ethical Union went through a process like this very similarly, because they sounded like they were from 1952, and there's some soul searching to do. So you don't have to be in a position to do lots of in-depth or expensive research. You can just sit down and have a think about this stuff. But this is the Humanist UK brand positioning. That's the technical term for it. And it will be different for your organization. It will reflect who you're speaking to, who your audience is, what their priorities are, and what you have to say to them. But what's important is that the language, it's falling off, is that your identity isn't just a statement of vision, but it's based on an understanding of the situation you find yourself in. And you can do things like Google surveys and SurveyMonkey to generate the data that will inform this kind of thing. But really, so in the Humanist UK example, we thought about what is our scope, what is our purpose. You know, we're advancing free thinking and freedom of choice so that everyone can live in a fair and equal society. That's a vision based on the fact that a lot of people in the UK are non-religious. So we're not speaking to a niche audience, we're speaking to everyone effectively. We want to say what our ambition is. That's another vision-like statement. A tolerant world where rational thinking and kindness prevail. We want to think, I'm not going to go through them all. The last one, the response, is quite an important one. That's thinking of the idea you want to incept in someone's mind. It might not be a phrase you use a lot, but essentially, when you create a positioning like this, it not only forms a script for lots of generic statements you'll say about your organization, about what you're doing, but it also gives you sort of boundary lines for the way you're going to talk and communicate with your audiences across all of your communications, not just digitally. So that's really the beginning point of any organization's birth or renaissance or refocusing. That's the wrong screen. Why are we doing all this stuff? Because we're here to change societies as humanists. Fundamentally, I believe, maybe you'll tell me I'm wrong, but people around the world are looking for some of the same things from humanist groups. They're yearning for representation that transcends the need simply for community. We've talked a lot about community this weekend, but community is only relevant to some people. What everyone wants, I believe, is a kind of validation. You can be alone and have a sort of a community of fellows who you never need to meet, because non-religious perspectives, even in highly non-religious societies like the UK, France, Norway, even China, where everyone's an atheist, are not actually particularly well represented in public discourse. So to be the organization that stands for this is actually a really powerful, solemn duty. People want to see their values reflected. I've got my notes in the bullet points. I didn't need to look at the other screen. And people want to participate as well as be represented. They see this organization that stands for who they are, for what they're saying, and they hope to see in that organization's communications the value of their being a part of that organization, being included, and ideally in that second full bullet point, reaping rewards. So you really want to be telling people what it is you're doing, even if all you're doing is commenting on the news. providing for these people. And the final point I'd say is that if I were to summarize what people really want from us on social media, is to be entertained, but we'll come to that later. You can't just you have to be able to speak to a broader range of people, and part of that is having some personality, and having a good comms function should cover that. So, how do we reflect people's values? Well, hopefully, you've thought long and hard about who you're speaking to. You think about who the non-religious are in Luxembourg. You think about who they are in Romania. You think about who they are in the United States, or maybe you're the Humanists of Catalonia, and you just want to think about that in your regional context. But once you've defined who you are as an organization and who you're speaking to, some of the biggest and best social media posts for a humanist organization will be about values. So this is just some content that we put together, not using it as a model of excellence from a graphic design sense, but this kind of post can get 4,000, 5,000, the day after a terrorist attack, 10,000 likes. People really just want to see messages they agree with. And it's an incredibly powerful thing to do, because your values are the reason that they joined your organization, or became affiliated with your organization, or started following you on Facebook. And whether that's with an old humanist philosopher, or a modern day advocate of humanism, that's our President Alice Roberts, or someone off the television who they might recognize, being able to express humanist values that people can identify with, relate to, recognize, and maybe internalize, or it's an incredibly powerful thing to do. It's that representation function that is so crucial to all of our organizations. Simply defining humanism is incredibly powerful. This post did really well in various forms over the years. This is a 3-point definition of humanism that I came up with, I think in a lunch break, and slapped together in Photoshop and put out in a 10-minute period. And it did really well, and in terms of numbers. And that's because people really just want to, as I said, be represented. They want to feel clever. They want to feel like they're not alone. They want to feel validated. So I think that should be a theme of everyone's digital communications. You're speaking to your members really about yourselves and about them. And if you're doing that well, it should be the same thing. We're an identity-based movement. Whether you're, with maybe some exceptions, for some specialist organizations, people are coming to humanist organizations on an identity basis. You might not join a certain political party on an identity basis. You might join them on a pragmatic basis. But for a humanist organization, we always have that close connection to people's feelings, and we can use that. This is just really an example of how you put that identity first and foremost. Again, I'm not saying that the most recent tweets or anything are particularly impressive, but I just want to draw your attention to the bios and the header images. What we're really doing is taking these messages that we know work well, that have worked in the past, or that we've workshopped, and drawing them to light. So in the example of Humanist UK's Twitter profile, just there, there's the message around brand positioning, which we tested with focus groups, and we tested with online polling, about 4,000 people in an online survey, and some groups around the UK. And this really appealed not just to the people who were our members, but to the people who were our target market, which is the 51% of people in the UK who are not religious. In Northern Ireland, you might not know about Northern Ireland, it's a part of the UK which is very religious, very repressive. There's no abortion rights. Gay people can't get married. But it's got a vibrant humanist community that we're working with. So just the header, advancing rational thinking and kindness in Northern Ireland, is really stating what your values are and what your purpose is up front. And again, with Faith the Faithless, which is our special project, which helps people who are leaving religions, hardline religions, the words freedom of choice, freedom from harm, really getting purpose out there, but also, a little flavor of values. I really would advocate putting that in front of what you do. Here's another example. This is our section for our LGBT members. There's quite a lot of them. And just a straightforward presentation of the organization's purpose. And that's from the main top-level brand positioning, with a picture of a woman who looks like she might be an LGBT humanist. I can say that. And again, you're really just presenting, you have to come up with a vision of your organization that you want to grow into. So if you are starting out, you're the Humanists of, well, I'm from Barbados originally, so I'll give that as an example. Say you're a Barbadian, you want to set up a Barbados humanist organization. If you can project a national organization, then people will come and fill it for you. If you build it, they will come. So this is the example of something we did when Stephen Hawking died, or possibly before actually. No, when he died. What's really important, people come to you for your expertise on humanism as well. So more important than this graphic with this quote that people want to share, I think, because I tested it, is the text that you do that frames the post. So really what you're selling to people is their relevance, because, again, you might be part of the 10% of your national population that is not religious, and you might never see your views represented. But if you can tell the story of why Stephen Hawking's death matters to them, and matters to everyone, and how they're insinuated into this story, people will appreciate it. So, Stephen Hawking was an inspirational man. He knew that he only had one brief life in which to appreciate the grandeur of the universe, and he made the most of this. He said that knowing this filled him with gratitude. His relentless hunger to know the universe better was a gift to us all, and we are all grateful for it. So to simplify, sounds like a fairly basic homily, but it's rooted in knowing exactly who we're speaking to and about what. And as well as getting likes, we actually got donations and memberships on the back of this. So this kind of thing can be quite powerful. And again, you can entertain people. I said earlier, once you've established your brand, your reputation, you can play around with the format a bit more, and people will appreciate it. So I'm not going to dwell on that for too long. But you can celebrate Happy International Cat Day and do hashtag Cat Day, hashtag cat, hashtag International Cat Day. And then, people, if you're in a larger country as well, where more people are non-religious, you can play around with more sort of mainstream messaging. So, I've said all the stuff that you probably already know. I'm going to talk a little bit about some models that you can think about when you're trying to use social media to grow your organization / promote your message. What I really want to emphasize here is the importance of seeing social media not as just a communications function, not as just a way of talking to people, but as actually the beginning of any growth strategy that you want to do from the year 2008 onwards, and we're in 2019. So, I'm going to make some assumptions here, that there's in this model, you're in a hypothetical place where you've got a 24 million population, but actually 8 million people in your country are humanists. These arrows represent different things that you can do. So, that one that's labeled social media, you're gonna maybe attract 45,000 social media followers. Using different sorts of campaign actions, which I will talk about later, you might collect 18,000 email addresses from these people. Of those, you might be able to use different email marketing techniques and get 8,000 paying members who, if you have 8,000 paying members paying even £10 a year, you're in a very different position to where you were at the start of this process. And you can get to 45,000 social media followers more quickly than you think. If you have good content, if you're struggling at 200 on your Facebook page, you can get to 45,000. I have confidence in you. And it's just really a case of working out that step between knowing your audience and knowing who you are. And the step after having your members or your donors is the people who go way further for you. And those are some special actions that we're not really going to talk about too much today. But this is the fundamental model. This is sort of a flow diagram of how you grow your organization. But there's also a way of thinking about it that focuses on the individual. And this is a framework called an adoption ladder. This isn't actually Humanists UK's adoption ladder, because I've simplified it a bit. But really, this is a way of thinking about your strategy in terms of the individual. So if you're not do you understand how it's a ladder? You start at the bottom, number 6, and someone works their way up to the top. And if you're not moving someone up the rung of that ladder, it's probably not something you should be doing at all. If you're really being strategic about your communications, Humanists UK doesn't talk to religious people. They're not on this ladder. Our growth and development ladder starts with I am non-religious. There's 51% of the UK population, 53 actually in the latest survey, but margin of error, is non-religious. So we don't need to talk to religious people to grow as an organization. And we can't convert people out of religious beliefs, so they're not very interesting to us from a development perspective. And then we just, with our social media comms, we can make them aware of us as an organization. We can make them identify with the label humanist. We can make them, hopefully, maybe with some emails, choose to actively support Humanists UK. At the point when they've made that step, we can make them donate to us, become a member. And ultimately, become a member who gives a lot more time and money than the average member, because that's the top rung of the ladder. All your comms should be aligned to this framework. If you find yourself doing things that don't have a strategic purpose, you might just want to stop doing them. And this is a simple way of thinking. You might not want to have sit down and write a high-level strategy from the get-go, but you might want to think about audience and your identity in these terms, and then what you've got there is a content strategy in 6 points. So think about that for your organization, your context. It might be, I am an atheist, you know. I am aware of atheists of Mauritania. I'm willing to support you, whatever it might be. This will probably be a similar ladder to most humanist organizations, but again, because it's a model example, you can also think of them on different vectors. So we actually, Humanist UK, we have one that's about awareness of humanism, and we have one that's about how much money they give us. But essentially, they are the same conceptual model. We can talk about this more at the end. I'm going to keep breezing on because I've got 42 slides. So, talking about the different tools you can use in the context of that ladder and in the context of that flow diagram I showed you. Facebook and Twitter are the obvious big ones. Instagram is a sort of a nice add-on, but doesn't really help any of these things. Unless you're a wealthy organization with that can afford to do advertising from the get-go, you're not going to get a lot out of Instagram as a member acquisition tool, in 2019 anyway. So Facebook and Twitter, you can set out your store, say who you are, promote your agenda, raise awareness, very importantly, target new people. Humanists International, very clearly, do posts that target a Spanish-speaking audience. They do posts that target people in East Asia, and that grows their Facebook page, and then that grows their email list, and that grows awareness of the campaigns they're running. State your principles, acquire contact data. This step is really important. We'll talk about it some more in a bit, but you can't just leave the 45,000 people on your Facebook page. You need to get them all off of that and get their email addresses and hopefully their bank details. The other big tool you have is email marketing. Don't want to be too poncy about it. Using email and have a professional service for that, like MailChimp or something cheap and affordable for your organization. It doesn't have to be hugely fancy, but it has huge advantages. So one of the first things you can do once you have your supporters' contact data is you can find out who they are, what they're into, what they like, what they want from you, why they chose to support you in the first place. If it turns out that 90% of your list, of the list of contacts you have, care about faith schools and not about other issues you have a priority in terms of your campaigns. Equally, you might find out that they don't like something you're doing, or they're mostly women, or they're mostly men, or they come from, they might be younger, they might be older. There's things that will help you to talk to them effectively. You can also begin to take them up that ladder. So you educate them once you've got their data about the many campaigns and starts you're taking. This can be as simple as making sure you email people once a fortnight or once a week. You can deploy them as activists, so get them protesting outside the Saudi embassy. You can ask them for money, which is really important. If you have someone's email address and you've not asked them for money, then it's probably a waste. Because they can either say yes or say no. And once they say yes, you keep asking them. And really, you keep asking them until they've taken some action within the context of the law where you are to decline being asked again. But really, if they're your supporters, they will appreciate being asked because they're doing something with the money they give you. They're not giving you money to buy a house. They're giving you money to advance the cause that they've told you they believe in and they support. So that's really the principle of that tool. Facebook and Twitter, show them love, make them love you. Email marketing, make them support you. That could have been a $sign, but it didn't look quite so good in that font. So, what's the best way to find new supporters? What am I going to say? Taking action online. So, we'll give you some examples in a bit, but really, your campaigns aren't just a way of moving your supporters along, they're a way of finding supporters. So, whether it's an online fundraiser, or whether it's a page about a particular campaign that you're taking action on, this is giving people a reason to come into your organization. So you're getting them to take action online and inviting them to join you. This is an example of something we did recently. We set up a campaign for people in Northern Ireland to write to their members of the Legislative Assembly about blasphemy law in Northern Ireland. And the important step there was they were directed off our Facebook page and off our email to find their MLA, so type in their postcode, click the button, and donate their email address to us in the process. Give us information about who they are. So that's a way of bringing people off of social media onto your database. Another example, we have a campaign about enhancing animal welfare protections. We want people to support an amendment to a bill in Parliament. This is a specific issues-focused campaign. Ask them for their postcode and their email address. Get them to find, so the next screen after that, they'll click that button and a letter will pop up with the name of their MP at the top, and it will ask for their full details. And then it will ask, do you mind if we keep your details? If you really love humanism, will you let us keep your details? Do you care about this cow? Please let us keep your details. They can say no. What's great about GDPR, actually, so in Europe, we had this thing called the GDPR. Most of you be familiar with it, even if you're not in Europe, because it changed the rules slightly about how you handle data. In practice, it's not a big deal, because if people don't want you to have their data, they're very unlikely to become your biggest donors in future. So really getting them to say yes to that early step means they're keener later on. Here's another one. We had a petition on our website telling this man, who's an MP, that we're not a Christian country, actually. And this is really connecting people's values and their feelings. We set a goal to have a fictional goal of 12,000 signatures, and we got 10,684 the last time I looked. And again, that's 10,684 people who, many of them we have known already, but some of them be brand new, entering our database to be asked for money and to do other things. Another one, we had a situation in the UK where there was lots of homophobic protesters outside schools. Everyone's quite upset about it, don't know what they can do. Give them something they can do. Even if what they're doing is just telling you how they feel, they're signing and lending their support, we can then do something with those numbers. At the very least, we can ask them to become members and support the work we're doing, whether that's on Richie's work talking to MPs and journalists, or anything else, or the work that our education team are doing to promote humanism and awareness of humanism more generally. So those are actions. Oh, one more. This is a man in the UK who wants to go to court to legalize assisted dying. We asked people if they will join Paul's team or they support him. We know that 82 to 90% of people in the UK do support this, so we thought a really human-led campaign. Give us your first name, last name, email, postcode. Will you sign up as a supporter, please? And sign up. So bringing emails into your, let's go back a bit. That's really this step here. Devising things that bring people in. You don't have to have a website that can do all these sorts of fancy things. You can actually use a change.org petition, and as long as you're using a service that lets you keep the information afterwards, you could set up a small fundraiser to raise, $100 for something you really need, because then as long as you can collect the data of the people who are donating to it through Just Giving or whatever service you're using, then it's worthwhile. So it's really important to get people taking action online on your causes, bring them in. And once they're in, you're talking to them. I'm not going to, I'll give you a few examples, a few points about how to make your emails work well and make them do the job. And that is simply, it's personalized to the person opening it. It will always be to that person's name. It will always know who they are and be written for that person. So you're thinking about your audience as you write this. You know that you're actually emailing an audience that care about a particular issue, so you're making sure they know it straight away, and you're keeping it succinct. Lands, oh, you all want to leave. God, are that bad? It lands at the right time, it makes its point in the right way, it asks them to do something, and it only asks them to do one thing. This is actually probably the most important of all these bullet points. If you're asking someone to do anything online, you ask them to do one thing at a time, even if that means you've got to ask them on 2 separate occasions a week apart. Because if you give people 2 things to do, they will do nothing. If you give people 1 thing to do, they might do it. That's an exaggeration, but it's basically true. So if you have to really think about what your ask is. What is the way to help Paul Lamb's legal case? It is donate today. Well, you can always make sure that everyone's asked something different. That one thing doesn't have to be the same for everyone. So you can make sure your members are asked to donate, and you can make sure that your supporters who told you they don't have any money are asked to share it on social media. But do ask people to do something, so they've got a reason to be engaged, and only ask them to do one thing. And repeat the main ask. They really have to be hit over the head with it. And if you put the main ask right at the end of your email, right at the very bottom, so people who just scroll through their emails might see it. People, I don't know about you, I open them up, I scroll to the bottom, I close them. It's proven with testing that this improves the number of people who click links in your email. So ask them to do one thing and repeat it. And make sure it's personalized. So you're thinking about the audience. So that's what I mean when I say that it's personalized. You're knowing who it's to and why you're talking to them. So once you know who they are, because you've done your surveys, you can start thinking about your audience as individuals as much as possible. Or if you can't get to individuals, thinking about them as segments. So you might think, our members who are under 30 are never going to be able to donate to this campaign. Therefore, they're not going to hear about this fundraiser, and we're going to ask them to do something else. Or you might say, our members in Wales really don't want to hear about campaigns in England because they can't take action on those campaigns. Or the other way around. So once you can think about your members in terms of what they want, you can give them communications that are tailored to them. So you might think about new supporters who know you less well. You might not ask them to take action on the case of a very particular nuanced campaign. You might give them something that's an easier step. You might want to make sure that your established supporters have something to do. You might want to think about supporters who don't care about other issues, and you know that for a fact because you surveyed them. You might want to think about people who live in a part of the country with different laws. In the UK, this is really important. If you tell people in Scotland to take action on something in England, your inbox will be very full of angry emails. You might want to think about this. In Belgium, you might have lists of people. They can't take action on a campaign in French-speaking Belgium. So disaggregate, make sure you're emailing the right people, not just everyone on your list at the right time. Other different things, so older people, younger people, richer people, poorer people, men, women, LGBTI, special experiences, so in our example, that might be ex-Muslims, or it might be people who have previously signed a petition on abortion rights. You know they care about abortion rights. So really you want to think about all the segments that make up your list once you've built up a list. And then you can move them up the ladder by thinking, what is the step up the ladder that this person needs? We know that our LGBTI members really care about LGBTI rights, so we know that that's the step that will move them up the ladder. It's not just theoretical. I'll give you an example of how you do this. So learn about your audiences, build up a good database. You can just start with something like MailChimp. MailChimp is basically a CRM, which is a customer relationship manager. So you can just sign up today for a client like that if you don't have a CRM. Eventually, once you've got some money coming in, you'll want to buy a proper CRM and get rid of all your spreadsheets. But you can start with something simple like MailChimp to email your members and learn about them as you go along. I'm not going to show you how to do that because I don't have time, but I'm just going to talk about it in the round. And then as you do these things, you'll learn on the go, but you'll learn and plan how to speak to each of your audiences, and then think about who you're speaking to and when, which you do like this. First, this is the tool that we use in Humanists UK. If you really want to think about a particular audience and what they want, and why they should support you or take a step, you can think about, in this order, following the circle, what's going on in the world that makes what we do important. Women are dying because they can't access legal abortions. Why do you think this is important? Women's rights are human rights, and dying is bad. How will we help? We will write to MPs, and we will direct the money you give us to do this. Response you want, wow, Humanists UK really cares about women's rights. That's a really simple thing, but here's an example of one for potential members. So what is our message about what's going on in the world to potential members? Distrust and misinformation mean we are lacking a positive, rational voice to unite us all. Why is this important? Because by standing together as humanists, we can more effectively promote rational debate and evidence-based positive ideas for a better society. How will we help people? Well, we provide a space for discussion and debate, a voice for the non-religious, and a vision of a future world based on our shared values. What do we want people to respond with? Humanists UK is the best placed organisation to represent the non-religious and fight for a more rational, tolerant UK. This exercise is really important because it will make it a lot easier to write a lot of your website pages and a lot of your emails. So spend some time really thinking about these bullet points. How will we help? This is actually the hardest one. What are we going to do? Because this is the thing that will make people join if you can get it right. Which is what end blasphemy laws is a good example. What is going on in the world? People are dying in Pakistan because of blasphemy laws. Why is this important? And European countries have blasphemy laws too, which lend support to those blasphemy laws. Why is this important? That's easy. How will we help? We will raise awareness at the UN of what we're doing. We will do these things. The response we want is European blasphemy laws lend support to blasphemy laws in the Middle East, and we must campaign to stop them. So that's a good example of a well-executed campaign. Here's another example. This is Humanist UK. I said we don't have religious people in our ladder, but we do have to deal with them for other things. So if we are a part of dialogue groups with religious people, and they control whether or not we can talk to the government about an issue, we need messages for them. So who are we to religious people? Well, Humanists UK have a constructive role to play in building a peaceful society, and we build our way there. Sorry, I'm nearly done. When you're communicating with your members and supporters, I talked about segments, I talked about knowing what you want to say. You can begin to plan this in a sophisticated way. So on Monday, you might tell all your members and new contacts about the petition of the new campaign you're running. You might also send a news release that day about the campaign. You might leave your top donors out of that and just tell them at a briefing, because later in the week, you're going to ask them for a lot more money than you're going to ask your regular members for. Once people have signed the petition, you might then ask them to join, because really they should be in that top row. So you'll think about that as Tuesday's step after they're all excited on Monday. On Wednesday, your members are already giving you money, but they might be able to give you some more. So you might use what's happened on Monday and Tuesday to write an email which says to them, wow, 50,000 people have signed our petition. That's thanks to you. We're changing the debate. Give us the money. The top donors who we briefed about the campaign on Monday, they might get their invitation to the big fundraiser for the campaign on Thursday. So you don't necessarily want them to be asked to donate on Wednesday, because you're going to get them in a room and make them donate 10 times as much later on. However, people in Wales are going to get something different. The Welsh Assembly debate invitation is coming up, and you want all your members in Wales to know about that. So once you've got this grid, and you've thought ahead about what you're doing and when, you can really make sure that everyone's getting the right communication. It doesn't have to be really hard, because you fill it in as you go along. And as a conceptual tool, having a grid like this is really useful. You might then, a couple of days later, add some things to it ahead of launch date, because you've got more ideas. To be flexible, this is a real example of a Humanist UK one. I won't linger on it very long, but we've nothing particularly for our students that week, but we've got different press releases coming out in these days. They correspond with different things we're promoting to different people. So it doesn't have to be very difficult. On that day, people in Wales and Northern Ireland had a completely different perception of Humanists UK. People in Wales thought we were all about education. People in Northern Ireland thought we were all about blasphemy. The truth is we're all about both, but they don't necessarily know about both because they've got one action each. And there's nothing people in Wales can do about Northern Ireland blasphemy, and there's nothing people in Northern Ireland can do about Welsh religious education, or Welsh sex education. So I'm going to top it all off with a case study of how we've done this well in the past. And this is a man who last year was told, a man from Pakistan named Hamza bin Waliat came to the UK because he feared for his life because he was a humanist, and people, including his own family, were very likely to hurt him and kill him. But the Home Office, which is the UK's immigration department, decided he would go back to Pakistan because they tested his humanism, and he didn't know who Plato was, and therefore he couldn't be a humanist. That was their logic, which is outrageous, but we know that outrage makes a great petition. So we put together a petition that got 12,500 signatures from our members. Most of those people were brand new to us because we've never campaigned on immigration or asylum related issues before, and it was like 6,000 new people came into our database from that. So the petition went on. It was targeted at this woman, Amber Rudd, who is in charge of the Home Office at the time, and it was the message was save Hamza's life. We thought about who we're talking to, what the ask was, and how it will help. When we generated enough signatures, we made sure we were doing some storytelling. We went to number 10 Downing Street with the box of signatures, and then we made sure that everyone knew about this just here there's an ask, because we had to explain the story. But really we're making sure that everyone on that list is getting told about this information, told about how they're helping. Later on we went to the UN and we talked about it, and we made sure we've done this. I'm writing to you today to ask if you can help us go a step further with this work by becoming a member of Humanist UK today. If you're already a member, you got asked to give £5 or something like that. In the end, the campaign was successful. That's Ham's on the your right there, with Richard Dawkins, Alice Roberts, and Andrew Copson. He, just a couple of weeks ago, was told he could remain in the UK. Part of the reason for that was the campaign itself, which brought lots of awareness to him. Part of it was the main part of it was the work that our public affairs team did in the background with the Home Office. But in the public dimension, everyone who signed that petition feels responsible for this result, feels grateful to Humanists UK, knows who Hamza is, so he's going to write lots of emails for us to our members saying, donate to Humanists UK.
And Hamza is we're going to have a celebration next week at Manchester. He's our new secretary.
Here we go.
Very much Humanist.
Once you've done all this, you've got some money coming in, you're going to give Facebook all your money. Because the next level, which I'm not going to go into details about, is setting up ads that target the people that go on your website that are designed so that you only pay money when someone becomes a member, and then you're willing to give Facebook any amount up to the cost of membership, and then you will effectively print money. But we can't go into that because I've just done the basics. But luckily, this is all very self-explanatory, and Facebook gives you a how-to video of how to do it all. But the level at the end, when you've built up your lists, you've got your audiences, you've got your messaging right, is to start using social media to target people who will never come across you organically, but Facebook will find them for you using its scary ways. So that's everything. I appreciate I went through that very quickly. I appreciate there was a lot of information there. That's because the 4 bullet points I was told to speak about were quite diverse. But hopefully you'll have some questions.